start.
You can start.
Give me 5, 4,
Okay.
I like that. I'm in production mode. I like that.
Oh my goodness.
Let's start. Let's try it again.
5, 4.
You don't have to push a button.
It's done. It's done. Got it. It's just automatic. On 5, 4, 3.
Good morning. I'm Jeffrey Fernandez from the Office of Human Resources Management, Benefit, Medical, and Work-Life Division, Retirement and Benefits Advisory Services Branch, RABIS. This morning, I would like to welcome you to the Federal Employee Retirement Systems Overview. Today, you will receive lots of information about the FERS retirement system. The presenter today for our FERS retirement system overview will be Ms. Sue Nordstrom. She will come before you and she will give you a presentation of about 50 minutes or so, and then we'll go into about a 10-minute break or so. We at RABIS are responsible for your retirement and benefits issues after you have been on the roads for more than 90 days. We at RABIS also interpret policy set forth by OPM. What does that mean? What we do is OPM sends out policy with changes to your health, your life, all types of insurance coverages that may have changes that may affect you as a CBP employee. We interpret that policy and we send that policy out to you, the CBP employee. How do we do that? Every Monday morning, we send out CBP Central. How many people have seen CBP Central? Okay. Very important that you understand what CBP Central is. This is one of the only avenues that we have to communicate with you, the CBP employee, about what's going on here in the Retirement and Benefits Advisory Services branch. So we send out things like webinars. We send out things like this retirement seminar that we're doing. We send out things like changes in policy that are coming forth. If you know, health benefits has gone through a massive change in about the last year, so things are consistently changing. Every Monday morning, you'll get that email in your box about, well, Monday or Monday afternoon. It'll come in and it'll say CBP Central. As I go around the country and talk to CBP employees, a lot don't know about this CBP Central. What you need to do is open up that CBP Central every Monday morning, whether it pertains to you or not. There may be something in there that pertains to you about what's going on here in the Retirement and Benefits Advisory Services branch. So webinars, again, like I said, health and life events, HRM notifications that'll let you know that things are changing with health and life and other things. So we handle your benefits and life insurance issues, which include qualifying life events, things like marriage, death, birth, and other things about that you can change your health and life insurance benefits on. Now, the information that you receive today is highly sensitive. Why do I say that? Because as we go around and we teach this information to a lot of CBP employees, some seem to think that they're now retirement specialists. Not all. But this information is sensitive because it can be dangerous in the wrong hands. What I mean by that is that you can speak with someone about retirement, about something that you have learned that may pertain to you, and you can tell another individual and it may not pertain to their situation. So if you're talking to someone about retirement, you really need to be sensitive to who that person is you're talking about. We get horror stories. Person that's in a FERS retirement system is talking to a CSRS employee, telling them about when they can retire and what's the best date. Totally different retirement systems. Can be very detrimental to that person that's receiving that erroneous information. We here at the Retirement and Benefits Advisory Services branch work diligently, daily, to keep abreast of the changes to health and life and the changes and things that OPM is setting forth. It's what we do. So what we ask is that you let us be the retirement advisors to CBP employees. Things that you have in writing that you'd like to share, you think you may know about, I would ask that you say, hey, I know something about that, but why don't you give RABIS a call? They're the experts. They do this daily. That way it takes you off the hook, and they get the right information when they call us. They'll call us, we'll take a specialist and having a specialist address their specific needs. And believe me, everyone's case is specific. There may be an instance in your case, you may have military, you may not. There are all kind of intricacies that go on with your retirement coverage. So it's really sensitive information that in the wrong hands can be dangerous. So be kind of careful about that. I'm not going to say too much else about that, but just be very careful about the information that you pass on. So, do we have any questions before we get started? We're about to get started. Anything we want to ask before we get started? Any general questions? Okay, great. All right, without further, I do want to give you our information. We are the Retirement and Benefits Advisory Services. Our contact number is 202-863-6180. And you should have that information in your handout. You can also reach us by email at rabisservices@cbp.dhs.gov. And you'll hear that again throughout the overview today. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to turn the overview over to Ms. Sue Nordstrom.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Is everybody ready to retire? Well, welcome to Retirement 101, or as I like to call it, everything you want to know about retirement but we're afraid to ask. But I want you to ask. As we, if your questions come up during the presentation, interrupt me so that we can cover your question while we're on that topic. And we'll have, if something happens and you think of a question later on, that's fine also, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end as well. So, what I'd like to do is have everybody introduce themselves, and I just want your first name and where you want to be geographically when you retire. So we can start right here.
Florence, Honolulu. No, but since I can't have that, probably Florida.
Dawn, Rockville, Maryland.
Mike, Florida.
Audwin, Spanish Fort, Alabama.
Sue, Virginia.
Cliff, Maryland.
Jean, and split between Maine and Georgia.
Rich, anywhere warm.
We'll go around the table and then we'll go around the outside.
Bobby, Virginia. Eric, on a beach.
Lou, out in the desert.
John, don't know, but not Washington, D.C.
Wayne, North Carolina.
Jack, it depends on where my kids are.
Eugene, in the mountains on a lake.
Ronnie, Hawaii or Florida.
Tony, South Carolina. Gabriel, New Braunfels, Texas.
David, and I'll be there in 2 weeks. In Augustine, Florida.
Cassandra South.
Sharon, South, somewhere warm, possibly Florida.
Rich, Seattle.
Casey, Fredericksburg, Texas.
William, Maryland. Sophia, somewhere in the south.
Ewing, New York City.
Anastasia, hopefully Arizona.
Charmaine, hopefully a tropical island, but most likely Ohio.
Kind of a conflict there.
Gary, Northern Virginia.
Angel, Boston.
Victor, Massachusetts.
Okay, so we're going to have people all over the place. All right, well, we're going to cover a lot of territory this morning. And here's our agenda. I'm going to go over retirement. How you get qualified for retirement. How we calculate your annuity. What's included in calculating, I'm sure you've heard the term high 3. I'm going to go over how we calculate that. First supplement. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that. I'm going to cover that, how it kicks in, how it kicks out, how it's calculated. We'll touch a little bit on Social Security. We are not Social Security experts, but I'll cover a little bit about it. And then we're going to go over benefits. Our slides cover the benefits with you as a regular employee and how you take it into retirement, what happens to them when you get into retirement. So as far as the slides about what's effective while you're an employee, we're kind of going to skip over those. But we'll deal with what you can take into retirement, how you take it into retirement, and how you can make changes after you retire. One thing I do want to go over too before I get started is your handouts. You've got several things in there. The first is a copy of the whole presentation. Second is, and we'll cover this when we get to the topic on TSP, there is a tax bulletin about tax information about withdrawals from your TSP account. There's a listing of useful contacts that we'll cover at the very end. And the very last item in your package is an evaluation sheet. So before you leave today, please fill that out and leave it up front for us. All right, so now we'll get started. So there's a lot of things that are included when you start thinking about retirement. Eligibility, you know, how many years do you need to have based on your age? Annuity computation, I'll cover how we compute your annuity. Survivor benefits, if you're married, your choices on making allowances for your spouse in the event that you predecease them. We'll cover deposit, redeposit service. If you were on a student appointment at some point in time, you were probably on what we call a FICA appointment, where you were only making contributions to Social Security. Depending on the timing of that service, you may be able to pay a deposit to have those years included for your retirement. If you had service way back when, left federal service, and then came back, you may have taken a refund, like I did. I had service back in the 70s. I left the government, didn't think I was ever coming back, so I took a refund of my retirement contributions. But when I did come back, I found out if I didn't pay that back, those years would never be included for computing my annuity. So we'll cover that. And again, all the health, life insurance, long-term care, all the other benefits that you have. We'll talk about Social Security, flexible spending accounts. And then we'll talk about the retirement application process. The paperwork, the forms that you need to turn in, the timing of it, and then the timing of the different payments that you get after you've decided on your date. So this is just showing you the cost. Do I have any Leos in the room? Okay. Any CBPOs? Okay. So this is showing what's coming out of your paycheck to the FERS retirement system. 0.8% is what all regular employees contribute to the FERS. 1.3% is what Leos and CBPOs contribute. There is a new Congress decided that more money needed to go into the retirement system. So employees that were first hired starting in 2013 are now putting in more. They are now putting in 3.1% of their pay, and 2014 is at 4.4%. I believe that was supposed to go up some more, but I did read recently they put that on hold. Social Security tax, everybody puts in the same amount, 6.2%, up to a base, and when we get to the Social Security section, I think it's 115,000 and some odd, that 117, that you pay Social Security tax on, and after that, they don't charge you anymore. In addition, you put in 1.45% for Medicare. So now we'll talk about your eligibility. You have to have at least 5 years to be entitled to a retirement benefit. And we're going to talk about reduced and unreduced benefits. There's times that you might have enough years, but you're not quite at the age, or you're at the age and don't really have enough years, that you can take a reduced benefit. You must separate from a position subject to first coverage. Everybody in this room, as long as you're putting into the first retirement system, is in a position. That's kind of a disclaimer that OPM likes us to put in everywhere. Under certain circumstances, a FERS annuity supplement may or may not be payable. Now, for reduced benefits, you would have to have at least 10 years of service, still separate from a position subject to FERS coverage. But that reduction, that's going to be a permanent reduction in your annuity. And we'll get into the qualifications later on, but basically it equates to 5% per year for each year that you are under 62. If you would want to retire with a reduced benefit. And under those circumstances, no FERS annuity, no FERS supplement would be payable. So here are the different ways you can retire. You'll hear me talk about MRA, minimum retirement age, and when we get to Social Security, we're going to talk about FRA, full retirement age. I'm sorry, minimum retirement age. So your minimum retirement age, and I think we have a chart on the next slide, it's based on your year of birth, as is your full retirement age with Social Security. For most people in this room, your minimum retirement age is probably 56. So if you decide to retire and you're at least 56 and you're going to have at least 30 years of service. Now this can be combined military and civilian. So with the 30 years, you can retire as early as your minimum retirement age. And this would be an unreduced benefit. If you're not going to have 30 years, but you'll have at least 20, you would need to wait until you were at least 60. And if you're not going to have 20 years, but you'll have at least 5, which is the minimum you would have to have anyhow, you would have to wait until you were 62. Now, if you're going to have it, didn't come on this one. Okay. Then we have an early out. This is, there have been talks about this about 2 years ago. This is something that is offered. The agency needs to apply to OPM for permission to offer this. And in this instance, it had been talked about prior to Mr. Kurlikowski, when Mr. Winkowski was still in office. It was on the table, off the table. Right now with Mr. Kurlikowski, he's got a lot of things on his plate and it's not being considered right now. But if the agency did want to offer it, you would have to be 50 with 20 years of service. If you had 25 years of service, you would qualify at any age. Discontinued service, that would be if the agency decided they didn't need your job anymore, if they were downsizing operations. Several years ago, several of the airlines did a lot of flights out of Honolulu decided to cut back on their flights. So they cut back on the CBPOs out there. So they offered them what they called directed reassignments. So their jobs were no longer necessary. So if they didn't take the reassignment to move, they might be eligible for a discontinued service retirement. But again, they had to qualify. They had to be at least 50 with 20 years of service, or if they had 25 years, they could retire at any age. Disability retirement. OPM defines you to be eligible for disability if you can no longer do the job you were hired for, which is different from Social Security's definition in that they would approve you for disability if you could not do any job. So if you could still go to McDonald's and flip burgers, you would probably not qualify for a Social Security disability. But if you could no longer do the job that you were hired for, you would probably qualify for a government disability from OPM, as long as you had at least 18 months of service. So these are all the different ways you would retire for an unreduced benefit. These are the minimum retirement ages. And now this is talking about the reduction. Now, for a reduced benefit, there's a retirement that we call MRA plus 10. You would have to have at least 10 years of service and be at your minimum retirement age. But like I said, if your minimum retirement age is 56 and you retire with only 10 years of service, you're going to have a permanent reduction in your annuity of 5% per year for each year that you're under 62. So retiring at 56, that's going to be a permanent reduction in your annuity of 30%. It is prorated, depending on how old you actually are when you retire under that system. Under that, the FERS annuity, the FERS supplement, is not payable. Disability retirements do not get the FERS supplement. Now, there's a way to avoid that penalty. As long as you are eligible to receive an annuity on the day you separate, but if you have another job that you could go to get benefits, you could postpone receiving your annuity until you were 60 or 62, depending on how many years of service you actually had, to avoid that penalty. In that instance, you would not have your benefits from the time you separated until you applied for your retirement at 60 or 62. At that time, you would apply directly to OPM. Doing the postponed, you would be eligible to get your benefits reinstated, your health insurance and your life insurance. Talks about a deferred retirement. This would be if you're 50 and you have 10 years of service and you just can't take it anymore, you've got to get out. So you would resign your position, and when you turn 62, you could apply directly to OPM for what's called a deferred retirement. But under that circumstance, because you were not eligible to receive an immediate annuity upon your separation, it would be a deferred retirement, and you would permanently lose your entitlement to your benefits. Now, special group retirement eligibility, this would be the LEOs and the CBPOs. They can retire at age 50 with 20 years of special group coverage. If you're going to have 25 years of special group coverage, you can retire at any age. Now, the CBPOs, that the new benefit took effect July 6th of 2008. Unless you're going to have 20 years of CBPO covered service, you still need to retire under the eligibility requirements for a regular retirement. But your annuity is going to get computed differently, and we'll cover that when we get to the computation part. And that's what I just covered about the qualifications for retiring under special group. Now, LEOs and new CBPOs that have been hired after July 6th of 2008 are subject to mandatory retirement when they reach age 57, as long as they've got the 20 years. If they get to 57 and have not reached 20 years yet, then their mandatory age will go until they get to the 20 years, and then they will have to be mandatorily retired. Now, that doesn't mean that they actually have to leave government service if they don't want to. They just have to get out of a LEO or CBPO covered position. And that's why the statement is there that you do not have to be in a covered position at the time of your separation. Yes, sir?
So that's only for CVPOs that are hired after that effective date?
Right, because they're subject to the mandatory retirement. Yeah. The CBPOs where the change came mid-career are not subject to the mandatory retirement age. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was about the new CBPOs only being subject to the mandatory retirement age. CBPOs that were hired after July 6th of 2008. CBPOs who were in their position prior to that date are not subject to that mandatory retirement. And we pretty much covered this. This is the deferred, about the deferred. I want to make sure I covered everything. Yeah, you've got to have at least 5 years. You're not eligible for an immediate retirement. You never took a refund of your first retirement contributions. Your health and life insurance are not reinstated, and you apply directly to OPM. Now, your annuity computations, there's several factors. It's your length of service, civilian and military. Are there any military people in the room? Retired military. Okay, so I want to make sure I cover everything. So it's length of service, civilian and military combined. And if you're retired military, more likely we're not going to count that because you would have to give up your military retirement and pay a military deposit on all those years if you wanted those years to be included. If you're not retired military but had military service, and if you want those years included for your federal retirement, you need to make a military service deposit. And we'll go over that procedure later on, if you have not already done so. Sick leave. Your sick leave is also, your unused sick leave is converted from hours to days, months, years, and added to your overall service for computation of your annuity. The second part is your high 3 average salary. Under most circumstances, it's going to be your final 3 years of service. It's your highest salary over 36 consecutive months. For CBPOs, that includes up to $17,500 of your COPRA overtime. And for LEOs, that includes your AUO if we're still getting it. Okay. And it, like I said, normally it's going to be your last 36 months of service. Not necessarily. For CBPOs, depending on how the COPRA overtime has been working for you, I know some places have really, some of the ports have really cut back on it. I've had a case lately that the gentleman's high 3 was from 8, 9, and 10 because they cut back so much on the COPRA overtime. So a quick count. Yes, sir.
I can see clearly here it says does not have to be employed to last 36 months of service. I don't know why. I was always under the impression that towards the end of your career, if you were making the most in salary for the last 3 years, that could not be considered. But obviously it can be.
Yes, yes, it's possible. Like I said, with the COPRA overtime, it could affect your high 3. If something happened and you took a downgrade, I mean, so, you know, you could be in a downgraded position for a year, which would then make the 3 years prior to that down